بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد فإن أحسن الكلام كلام الله وخير الهدى هدى محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وإن شر الأمور محدثاتها وكل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وكل ضلالة في النار. So we continue today our discussion of the karamat, the miracles of the awliya, and in the previous lesson we looked at a number of issues related to this. We said that the karama is something that follows on from the walaya. The walaya is the friendship and the allegiance and the loyalty and the relationship which exists between a person, a righteous person, a pious person, and Allah Azza wa Jal. And that this is based upon al-iman and at-taqwa. Al-iman and at-taqwa. That these two attributes, they are the basis of al-walaya. And we said that the karama is something that is out of the ordinary. It is something unusual, which is made to happen through a wali. And that this is something which is an effect. It is a consequence of walaya, the relationship between this wali in terms of iman and taqwa and Allah Azza wa Jal. We also mentioned as well that there are also those things that we see which are from the shayateen. These are also things which are out of the ordinary. And likewise, there are those things which happen to the prophets and the messengers. So we looked at these issues. There were maybe 5 or 6 issues that we looked at. We also described what actually is a miracle, a karama. We said that it can affect. There are 2 aspects to it. First of all, either qudra or ta'thir. Qudra meaning the ability of a person, and secondly, the effect that a person may have on other people. Right? So a miracle can be in one of these 2 things. So when we speak about a miracle upon a person, maybe his hearing is enhanced, maybe his seeing is enhanced. There's something physical, there's some in his ability, in his senses, where he has something that's unusual. And likewise, in terms of an effect, a ta'thir is able to affect other people in a manner which is unusual. So we looked at these issues in some detail in the previous lesson, and we're going to continue today, inshallah ta'ala, with point number 6. So this is the 6th point in the 6th mas'ala in the masail that we've been discussing. So in this point, we want to look at some of the differences, look in a bit more detail at some of the differences between the 3 categories of things which are unusual. Right? So for example, a miracle of a prophet or a messenger, that is something that is unusual, it's extraordinary. It opposes what we know from the customs and that which is habitual in nature or whatever else. And likewise, the karama of a wali. And likewise, the things that are done by way of the shayateen, of the sinful people who are known to be sinful, people are known to be innovators, the things which happen through them. Right? So outwardly, we see things which are unusual. All of this appears to be the same. The difference is that the prophets and messengers, they have ayat and barahin. Ayat, barahin or mu'jizat. This is what we refer to them. And the wali, he has a karama. And those who are besides them, they have what we call halat shaytaniyah. Halat shaytaniyah. These are satanic states that are really behind what we see from these people. So these are the three categories of things that what we see from them. They seem to be unusual and out of the ordinary. And so we want to look at some of the differences between them, so we are clear about the differences. So first of all, as you've already seen, that depending on who we are ascribing this extraordinary thing, this event or this thing which is unusual, depending on who we ascribe it to, then it will be given different names or labels. Right? So if it's ascribed to a prophet, it becomes an ayah. It is an ayah. It is a burhan. It is a mu'jiza. An ayah is a sign, a burhan is an evidence, and mu'jiza is like a miracle, something that nobody else can do, is incapable of. When it's ascribed to a wali, it becomes a karama. It is a karama. And if it is ascribed to, if we see it from the hands of the magicians, for example, and the fortune tellers, and people who are generally we know to be swindlers and cheats and fraudsters and liars and people like that who trick the people, then this we refer to this as a satanic state. A satanic state. So that's the first point that we should notice. The second point that we should notice, which is the difference between an ayah of a prophet and a karama of a wali, which is that when something happens to a wali, it is never associated with a claim to prophethood. Meaning that when we see something unusual happen to a wali, which appears to be like a miracle, then this, in the case of a true wali, we will never ever see this wali making a claim to be a prophet. Right? So even though we might see many great things happening at the hands of some of the awliya, then we never see that they at the same time make a claim to being prophets. And anyone who tried to make a claim that he is a prophet on account of certain miracles that took place at his hands, then we know surely that this person is a shaitan. This person is a shaitan, kadhab. And that this person is simply being aided by way of the devils, by the jinn, the shayateen. As for the prophets, then we know that alongside their miracles, they claim to be prophets. Musa alayhi salam, Isa alayhi salam, Muhammad sallam. So this is the difference between what happens to the awliya and what happens to the anbiya, between the ayat of the anbiya and the karamat of the awliya. There is no claim to prophethood. The third thing that we should notice as a difference is that when we compare between the prophets and what happens to the prophets, we see that the types of things which happen to them are generally, they are greater and mightier than the things which happen to the awliya. Meaning that the level and the extent and the greatness and the unusualness, the extraordinariness of what happens to the prophets is something far greater, far superior than that which happens to the awliya of the karamat which happen to them. And as for what happens to the magicians and the sorcerers, the shayateen, the people like them, people of disobedience, then in reality, when we see these unusual things happening from them, it is not really something that is outside of the ordinary. And we explained this in one of the previous lessons. We said that the magicians, they're actually making use of the jinn. And when they make use of the jinn, we know that the jinn, they have certain abilities as part of their nature, as part of their creation. They cannot be seen. They can take the form of other people, of other objects, of other animals. They can make a person imagine certain things. They can make a person in his senses, in his hearing, in his seeing, in his sense of smell and touch. Right? They can make a person feel and perceive things which are not really there. Right? They can fly in the air. They can make things levitate and appear to, levitate in the sky. So all of this, when we see these types of things coming from the Shia, from the magicians and soothsayers, it does not really fall into the definition of a karama. Amrun khariqun lil'ada, something that is outside of what we know to be like the laws in creation, right? Because what a shaitan does, what a jinn does, is actually is in the laws of creation. Because we are simply seeing things that they are actually capable of doing, which Allah has given them the abilities and the means to do. So it is nothing outside of the ordinary, right? This is unlike the genuine miracles and the ayat of the prophets and messengers. Because these things, like take for example, the parting of the Red Sea, with respect to Musa alayhi salam, right? This is a real, genuine miracle. It is not something that the jinn can do, because it's outside of the scope and the ability of the jinn to do the likes of these things, right? So basically, we are saying that what the shayateen, the type of alleged miracles of the magicians and those people, they are just simply things that people are made to imagine by the shayateen, or maybe the shayateen, they take on a form, they pretend to be a person, they carry things in the air and things like that. This is all it is. It's this type of thing that we are seeing from the shayateen. So then the Shaykh goes on to again discuss the same thing in a bit more detail, and he says that another example is the ayah in the Quran in which Allah Azza wa Jal, He says that neither jinn nor men, even if they combine together, can bring something like the Quran, because the Quran is the greatest miracle of the Messenger of Allah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. قُلْ لئن اجتمعت الإنس والجن على أن يأتوا بمثل هذا القرآن لا يأتون بمثله ولو كان بعضهم لبعض ظهيرا. Say, if the men and the jinn came together in order to bring the likes of this Quran, they would not be able to bring the likes of it, even if they aided and supported each other. So, if the Quran was not from Allah Azza wa Jal, then all of the capabilities of the jinn and the men together combined, they would easily be able to bring the likes of this Quran. If they can do other things, if they can do other, like the tricks that they do with the magicians and, whatever other qualities and abilities they have, why should they not be able to bring the likes of this Quran if their rejection is correct and true? They can't. And so this shows that the Quran as a genuine miracle cannot be repeated. It cannot be performed by the jinn and the men, because it is outside of their capability. So this again shows the difference between a genuine miracle and the tricks that are played by way of the shayateen and the jinn, the devils, in collaboration with the magicians and the fortune tellers and people like them. So what they do is unlike the miracles of Musa alayhi salam, or the miracles of Isa alayhi salam, in which he genuinely heals the sick and raises the dead, and nor the miracles of the Messenger Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Now, the Shaykh then goes on to discuss another issue, and this is to do with, sticking to the same point, this is to do with what happened in the court of Sulaiman alayhi salam. And this was in relation to when there was an ifrit, a jinn in his court, and likewise a person of knowledge in his court. And what happened was that the Ifrit said that he will bring the throne of the Queen of Sheba, that he will bring it to him before Sulaiman stands from his place. As we see in the Quran, قال عفريت من الجن أنا آتيك به قبل أن تقوم من مقامك. I will bring it to you. I will bring this thing to you. I will bring this the throne before you stand from your place. Before you stand from your place. And so this is the Ifrit from the jinn. And however, there was another person present, and he said, قال الذي عنده علم من الكتاب علم من الكتاب أنا آتيك به قبل أن يرتد إليك طرفك. This person, he's a person of knowledge. He said, I will bring it to you. A person who had been given knowledge of the book, he said, I will bring it to you before you turn your glance. And so this thing, the throne that was brought from one place to another place, what the Shaykh is saying is that this really isn't, it's not from the ayat of the Anbiya, and nor is it from the Barahin of the Anbiya, but it is for that person who was given knowledge, it is for him a karama. It is for him a karama. And as for the jinn, if the jinn had brought it, then this would have been something that the jinn is actually capable of doing, because it's within the capabilities of the jinn. So for the jinn, for the ifrit, that would not have been something out of the ordinary, right? But it so happens that Allah Azza wa Jal had given to Sulaiman alayhi salam the service of the jinn, the service of the men, right? He was given all of these, he was given this support. And so the jinn could do certain things which are within their capabilities. But in this case, this person of knowledge, and the Shaykh goes on to explain that this was something, he made dua, and when he made dua, he was responded to and it was brought for him. And this for him was a karama, because it is out of the ordinary. Right? It is out of the ordinary for a man, to be able to bring an object like that from, Yemen, and bring it to the court of Sulaiman in Jerusalem. Right? But because it happened at the hand of a wali, this man who was given ilm, given knowledge, then this then becomes a karama in relation to this individual. So the point then being made here then is that when we look at the ayat of the Anbiya and we look at the karamat of the awliya, there is actually a difference in the greatness and the level of the actual miraculous thing which takes place. Another difference that the Shaykh goes on to mention is that the so-called miracles of the shayateen and the magicians, then this is simply what people are made to imagine, what the eye sees. And so often they will see that a jinn has taken the form of a person or of an animal. And this in history, there are many examples of this in history. For example, Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah ta'ala, once a person came to him and he said to him that I was with some companions and some hardship befell us, some difficulty came upon us, and we saw you, and we basically asked you for help. And so when he said this to Ibn Taymiyyah said, well, hold on, I wasn't even in that place. I was actually somewhere else. I was in Damascus, whereas those people were outside, away from Damascus. So he said, basically this would have been a jinn who took on my form. And this is because Allah Azza wa Jal has given the jinn the ability to take on the form of other beings, other animals, other humans, and so on and so forth. So So the effect that the shayateen have and the alleged miracles of the shayateen, they are of this nature, right? They can take the form, the shape, the appearance, and sometimes they might not be able to take the form of the appearance, but they can affect what the person sees, right? So a person might think that he is seeing something, but that thing is not really actually there in substance. It is just an appearance. Like, for example, humans might see a mirage, for example, in the distance, right? Because of the way refraction is working and the light is being, and you might see a mirage of something, but it's not really real. There's nothing physically actually there, but it's just like an appearance to him. In a similar manner, sometimes the jinn, the shayateen, they can produce this type of effect. So a person thinks he's seeing something in front of him. There's nothing physical, tangible or real actually, which is actually there. So we see then from this discussion, that the so-called miracles of the shayateen are not really real. They are really from the devils. The miracles of the magicians, that is, they are not from they are from the shayateen, from the devils. The fourth and final point here, or the difference, is again that if you look at the general category of the karamat of the awliya, and then you look at the general category of the miracles of the prophets, they are not in the same league. They are not of the same type. They might have some resemblances and similarities, but they are not of the same type. So, for example, we know from some of the reports that there are some of the righteous people for whom they were not burned by the fire, right? Meaning from the Muslims who came from the later generations. But at the same time, we know that Ibrahim alayhi salam, his miracle was that the fire was made to be cool for him. Now, even though this seems to be outwardly something similar, the point that is being made here is that in the fire that was for Ibrahim and the fire that was for this person, they were not the same type, right? And the situation in the actual qualities and details were not really the same. For Ibrahim as-salam, it was much greater than it was for this individual, right? So this is just a general thing about the nature and of the two types of miracles, those for the prophets and those for the awliya. So this was point number 5. It's all to do with distinguishing between the ayat and the barahin of the anbiya, the karamat of the awliya, and what we see from the trickery and the deception of the magicians and the soothsayers and the fortune tellers who make use of the jinn. Right? These are some differences between the three of them. Point number 7, Point number 6 Point number 7, is that we mentioned before that there were some groups who rejected miracles. They rejected belief in the karamat of the awliya. And they are the Mu'tazila. And they basically said, the reason why they said was, if we start believing in the karamat of the awliya, it means that we are undermining the ayat of the anbiya, meaning the actual miracles of the prophets. Because if there are miracles which take place at the hands of other people besides the prophets, we have now undermined one of the arguments that we can use to prove the prophethood of the prophets. Right? Why? Because these people were arguing for Allah's existence. They had rational argument for Allah's existence. And this included, part and parcel of it was, that the prophets brought miracles that no one else can do. Right? So in order to protect this form of argument, they basically denied and rejected that there are any miracles for anyone besides the prophets and the messengers. Right? So as a result of this, they denied the karamat of the awliya. And our answer to this, our answer has already proceeded. We said that basically, that we said that there are three types of things which are out of the ordinary. Either they are the miracles of the prophets, or they are the miracles of the righteous, or they are the tricks and the deceptions of the shayateen. Right? They are not the same, they are all different. And we mentioned some of the differences between them. And we mentioned that, we also mentioned that the miracles of the awliya are clearly mentioned in the Quran. Right? So for example, we gave this example of the man who was in the court of Suleiman, and it was a karama that the throne of the Queen of Sheba was brought into the court of Suleiman. This is an example of a karama in the Quran. Likewise, the karama in the Quran of the Ashabul Kahf, the people, the youths who were in the cave, and they slept for 309 years. This is a karama, because they were not prophets. Likewise, Maryam alayhi salam, when Zakaria would enter, and he would find that she had always had food, he would say, where have you got this? Where has this come to you from? And she would say, قالت هو من عند الله. It is from Allah. So this again is a karama, because Maryam alayhi salam is not a prophet. So we can see clearly therefore that belief in the karamat is established in the Quran and likewise in the Sunnah. And so therefore when these people, they deny the karamat of the awliya, essentially they are denying something which is firmly established in the Quran. Now, as for the argument when they say that the miracles of the awliya, they will resemble the miracles of the Anbiya. This again is not true. Is not true, because we've already established the various differences between the miracles of the prophets and the miracles of the awliya. So this is point number 7, and also in relation to this, as a side point, the Mu'tazila, if you think about the consequences of this belief, this is also what led them to reject belief in magic, sihr, what led them to believe in, what led them to disbelieve in magic, right? Because they denied that anything out of the ordinary can take place for anyone besides the prophets, then those things which their intellects could not explain, like for example the magic that would be done by the magicians, and the strange and unusual things that we see taking place, they also denied magic as well, right? This was something that was a consequence of their rejection of the miracles of the awliya. That if you're going to reject that, right, then you also have to reject all of the actual magic that takes place. So then, as a result of that, they then basically try to give rational explanations as to why someone, who's suffering from magic, for example, and certain states and conditions that you see from that person, they say, oh, well, it was this and it was that and it was this and it was this and it was that. So they try to bring rational explanations. This in turn leads them to go and, with some of the modernists, they then deny the existence of the jinn. Right? So you can see where, step by step, this leads them, and that's why I see people in the modern era, in the last century, or the century before last century, and the last century, and this century, see there are people who deny the existence of the jinn. They say there's no such thing as the jinn, it's just something else. Right? Because they deny, so this is what happens when you deny one thing, and then it leads you, when you leave your intellect to go and start think about things, it then denies other things by necessity. This is point number 7. The Mu'tazila, who denied the karamat of the awliya because they believed it would undermine and falsify the miracles of the Anbiya, miracles of the prophets. Point number 8 is that now this is quite important, because we've established now what is a karama. A karama is something that is out of the ordinary. Right? It breaks the normal laws that we know of, that we are used to, that we observe. But there are some other things that can take place to believers, which do not enter into the category of the karamat. And they should not be entered into the category of karamat. And from those things is the assistance and the aid that Allah Azza wa Jal sometimes gives to a believer, where He gives him aid and support, where, for example, maybe something would happen whereby He saves him from a calamity, saves him from a hardship, saves him from some harm, right? And this, the way he was saved might be something really unusual. This is not to be counted as a karama. Rather, this is to be counted from the bounties of Allah Azza wa Jal. Now let me give you an example. It could be the case, for example, that a believer is walking on the street and, in front of him is a bus stop. And in this bus stop, there are a group of people standing, and he's walking towards them. And all of a sudden, some debris falls from the building, a boulder or something falls, and it falls, onto the people, and they all die. And he's literally a foot away from that, from that location, from that place, literally a foot before it, and he's saved, right? This here now is not a karama. This is not a karama, because there's nothing that's out of the ordinary that's happened here. There's no laws which have been broken. It's unusual in the way that this person, like literally a split second, he survived. But this is from the ni'am, the favors and the bounties of Allah Azza wa Jal. Right? And so often there can be many things that happen to believers which are of this nature and which are of this category. And so these cannot be treated to be miracles. Rather, what we have to do is we distinguish between what is a miracle, amrun khariqun lil'ada, something which breaks the normal laws of creation, which is out of the ordinary, which is unusual in that sense, and things which, although they might be rare and unusual and very highly unlikely to take place, yet they do take place. They are not miracles, they are not karamat, because the aada, what is customary and normal within the scheme of things and the laws, are not broken. They have not been broken, right? Or like, for example, a person might just fall off a building and land, and he hasn't broken a single bone in his body. Or a person is involved in a crash, a horrendous crash, and he's flung out of the car, and he goes and falls 20, 30 feet, and he lands on the grass, and he rolls, and he walks up, and there's nothing broken. Right? This again is not really khariqun lil'ada, because within the scheme of the laws, it just so happened that the way that he fell and nothing broke. This again is very highly unlikely, but it is not a miracle, right? So we have to clearly distinguish between those things which are outside, which are actual miracles, and those things which are very unusual, but they do not break, the laws in Allah's creation. It's important to mention this because there are many people, especially amongst the Sufi tariqas, and you find that certain things happen to them which are unusual. They're not miracles, they're not karamat, but they are unusual things that happen, which are just from the bounties and the favors of Allah Azza wa Jal. And then what they do is they use these things to basically draw the people towards them, right? And they make it look as if karamat are taking place through their hands, but they're not karamat. Yeah, they're not actual karamat. But they are unusual things, but they are not karamat. So these Sufis, they use the likes of these things to make the people think that there are miracles taking place at their hands, and to make them think that they are awliya, and to draw the people towards them, and so on and so forth. Now also, these types of favors that Allah bestows upon a person, they can be in relation to worldly affairs, like we mentioned. A person is saved, or some extraordinary things happens. Or it can be in terms of the religious affairs. There may be unusual things that Allah gives him as a favor in terms of, the religious affairs. So we have to distinguish between this and between the karama, between the genuine, actual miracle which is khariqun lil'ada, which opposes the laws which we know to be customary in Allah's creation. This brings us now to point number 9, the 9th point, and this again is very important. And this is that we understand that just because a wali has been given a karama, a miracle, that does not mean that he has any superior position or any superior status. A karama does not equal tafdeel. Tafdeel means, that the person is given some sort of excellence or superiority. It's very important to understand this point. A person who has had a miracle take place through his hands, a karama, it does not mean that he now has a better position, a better status, that he is more superior to the one who has not been given a karama. And this is because, as we established, a karama is something that Allah bestows upon a person, upon a servant. Why? Because a servant might be in need in his faith, in his iman, or in the worldly affairs. He might be in need of something that will strengthen his faith. Right? So really, it shows that this person was in need of something that would protect his faith or would increase his faith. So in essence, a person who does not receive a miracle and who is strong in his iman, he is superior than the one who is not like him, than the one who is in need of a miracle in order to increase his conviction, increase his gratefulness, keep him on the right path, and so on and so forth. So the point being that the one who receives a karama, it does not mean that he is now somehow more virtuous, more excellent, and that he has a superior status. And that's why we see that when you look at the miracles given to the Sahaba, they are much less than the miracles that we find narrated from the Tabi'een. Right? So if you look at the literature which mentions the miracles of the Sahaba, it is much less than the literature which mentions miracles taking place, for the Tabi'een. But the Sahaba are superior. That's because they were stronger in faith, more established in faith. And people who are stronger in faith than Allah Azza wa Jal, He puts them through the route of ibtila. Right? So the people who are stronger in faith, they get put to trial, al-ibtila. They get put to trial in their faith because their faith is so strong. They will be able to pass these various tests and maintain and keep their faith. But as for those people who are weaker than them, if they were put through trials and tribulations and hardships and calamities, maybe a person might be pious and righteous in the sense that he has lots of prayer and fasting and charity and the recitation of the Quran, and because these things are easy, right? But if he was put to a trial, if now there's a severe trial that came to him in his life, a very harsh illness, loss of life, loss of wealth, poverty, he might not be able to handle these affairs and he might weaken his faith, he might lose his faith. So with these kind of people, then we see that Allah Azza wa Jal, He might take the route of al-ikram, meaning al-in'am, meaning honoring them by bestowing something of a karama upon them. Right? So this increases their attachment now, increases their iman now. Right? So the point being, and again we see the hadith, يُبْتَلَى الرَّجُلُ عَلَى قَدْرِ دِينِهِ أَشَدُّ النَّاسِ بَلَاءً الْأَنْبِيَاء ثُمَّ الْأَمْثَلُ فَالْأَمْثَلُ. That a person is put to trial in accordance with his deen. The most severe of people who are put to trial are the prophets, then those who are like them, then those who are most like them. So this shows that one person might be so strong in his faith that Allah Azza wa Jal, he has so much walaya that Allah Azza wa Jal, He puts him to trial because he will pass through that trial because he's strong. And others, He will leave him and abandon him and not put him to trial, but he will give him the root of, as we said, al-karama, because of the extent of his faith. Right? It's not as high as the one who he'll put to trial. So the point being that the karamat of the awliya are often because the awliya are in need of these karamat, and so that this person does not become weak in his faith. And as the Shaykh says, some people have tremendous amounts of worship, of praying at night time, fasting in the daytime, reading the Quran, giving charity, but as soon as some hardship comes to him, some calamity, that's it. And he doesn't receive any relief, then he will basically, his heart, the iman will become weak in his heart. Right? Some people are really like that. So the point being then that a karama does not mean that a person has any superiority or any virtue or excellence. And so our belief, when we speak of our belief in the karamat, and when they are mentioned in the books of creed, we are not believing it in the sense that, remember, the point of belief here is not that the awliya who are given miracles are somehow superior. Right? This is not what we are reading into this belief. Right? This is the way of the Sufis and people like them. This is not where we're coming from. Our belief in them is because of their existence. Yeah? What we are believing in is in the existence of the miracles of the awliya. But as for how we see them, then we see them in light of what we've just mentioned in this point number 9. Right? That just because miracles exist, it does not mean that the wali who has had a miracle performed through his hands, he's therefore now much superior and virtuous and excellent, and the people should flock around him. And no, not at all. Right? So our belief in the miracles is i'tiqad of their wujud, that they exist and they are real and they are true, and that things which are khariqun lil ada, outside of the ordinary, that these take place as a favor and a bounty from Allah Azza wa Jal. But at the same time we believe that those who are stronger in faith, they are not in need of miracles. That's why the Sahaba, there are not many miracles related from them. Very few. But those after them, the Tabi'een and the Tabi'een, there are much more miracles related from them. Because they do not have the faith and the strength and the resilience that the Sahaba had. So, this does not mean that anyone is superior or anything like that. So this means that just because someone has miracles that are being related about him, does not mean that he's special, that he's more knowledgeable, that he's more excellent, that he's more worthy of being followed, that his statements are more worthy of being accepted. No, not at all. Right? This is the way of the Sufis, That's why you will see these people like this Tahir al-Qadri. He will say, they have this statement that they make when they say that blindly follow the awliya, but do not trust the ulama. Right? So always question and suspect the ulama, but blindly follow the awliya. Right? This is the opposite of what we are saying. Right? We are saying that that you follow ilm, knowledge, people of knowledge, and the karama, the miracle of the wali does not make his statement any more true. Does not make him more worthy of being followed than an alim necessarily. Right? So it's important that we understand this. And also, at the same time, we see that when we look at many of the reports of the righteous people, we see that many of them, they would actually conceal and hide the karamat. Right? They would not relay them or mention them, because they know that this is a trial now. Because when you start mentioning these karamat, and it's as if you want the people to come and turn and come to you and come around you, and you are drawing people into tribulation, you're drawing yourself into tribulation. So it's mentioned about many of the righteous people that they would hide the miracles. They would hide the miracles. And maybe this was one of the reasons why we don't see many miracles being related from the Sahaba, because they concealed them and kept them, because they understood this very point that we are making, right? Whereas there are more karamat related from the tabi'een and more from those after them. So the point being then, it is wajib that we do not believe that anyone who has had a karama, a miracle, that this is somehow a clear proof of the strength of his iman and his taqwa, and no, greater than anyone else. Rather, we just simply say that anyone who's had a karama, we know it's a sign that he's a person of iman, a person of taqwa. Right? This is what we believe. But not that he is now someone superior and excellent and more worthy of being listened to and followed, and all the rest of it that follows on from that. And basically that you conceal the karama because of the tribulation which is associated with it. And especially in a time when there is so much jahl amongst the people, like you see with the Sufis, and you see it with other than Muslims as well. You see false miracles taking place amongst the Christians. A tear's water will come from the eye drop of a statue or an idol, and then thousands of people will come flocking because they'll say, well, this saint or this whatever, shed a tear or something, or all of these are just tricks of the shayateen and the jinn. And so when you see the jahl amongst the people in a general sense, then to come out and to present these things to the people, it puts them to trial. We finish with the final point for today's lesson. And this is point number 10. And this is also another thing that we have to distinguish from a miracle, a karama. We mentioned earlier on that favors and bounties that Allah Azza wa Jal gives to a person which are very, very unusual, very unlikely. Like, for example, someone's life is saved, or someone is protected from harm in a very unusual way, or maybe there are some positive benefits that have come to him in a very unusual way. These are not miracles. They're not miracles, right? They are very, very unusual, but they are not actually miracles, because they don't break the laws, the laws within which Allah's creation operates, right? They're unusual, yes, but they don't break the laws. And that thing was, we said, they are like favors of Allah Azza wa Jal. There's something else, and this is known as al-firasa. Al-firasa is something that is like it's a very, very high level of intelligence and insight. Firasa. And al-firasa is the ability of a person to understand other people and to know them, to basically look into other people and to know their statements, their motivations, what is happening with them, to understand them and to know them. This is basically known as al-firasa. In English you could say perspicacity. Perspicacity is a word which means, very, very shrewd intelligence, right? There's a hadith in which this word has appeared, and this hadith is related by At-Tirmidhi and others. Many of the scholars, a group of the scholars, they say that it is Hasan, this hadith, and in this hadith, ittaqu firasat al-mu'min. Ittaqu firasat al-mu'min. فَإِنَّهُ يَنظُرُ بِنُورِ اللَّهِ. So he said, beware of the firasa of a believer. Meaning, beware of the insight and the shrewdness and the perspicacity of a believer. Because indeed he looks through the light of Allah, by the light of Allah. Now, this firasa is explained as it's basically ilm and knowledge that is put into the heart of a believer. And through this knowledge, he knows what is in front of him. He knows and he understands people. He can see he understands people. He knows what is happening and going on with what's happening in their souls and what they are thinking and the basis of their statements. And so he understands them. In terms of being truthful, being dishonest, and what the person, how he is thinking, and so on and so forth. All of this is what's referred to as al-firasa. And so basically it's like a type of light and knowledge and understanding that Allah puts in the hearts of some of His servants. Now the scholars, when they speak about this firasa, they divide it into three categories. They say, first of all, there is al-firasatul imaniyya. Al-firasatul imaniyya. So this is, as we said, where a person is given such understanding in his heart about other people, the condition of other people. Now some people treat this to be a karama. And this is the point that we are making in this point number 10. It is not a karama. Alright? Al-firasa is not karama. It is not miracle. It is not something outside of the ordinary. Right? But this is the first type, al-firasatul imaniyya. Another type of firasa is a firasa, al-firasatul riyadiyya. This is a type of firasa which a person gains by way of experience and training. Meaning that you become shrewd and you become intelligent and you become, and the way you do that is, by you exercise the soul, you train the soul, you keep away from the desires of the soul, and you train your soul to not be affected by impulses and biases and things like that. And so you train yourself. This is something that we know that it can happen amongst the people who are like that. And there's a third type, firasatul khalqiyya. And this type of firasa is when, for example, you look at people and just by looking at their body and the way they walk and the way they speak, and you look at their features like the hands or whatever else, you can generally get an idea of what this person's character is going to be like. Is this person intelligent? Is this person dumb or foolish? Is this person sophisticated? Is this person simple? Right? This is a type of knowledge that we know that this is a type of knowledge that has been written about, and it's found amongst the nations. You will find books written upon this in the nations that have gone past, nations which are present today, likewise in the Muslim nation, in the non-Muslim nation. All of this it's like a type of knowledge that's to do really with the qualities and characters of people, and determining that from just looking at a person, right? Looking at their gaze, looking at their physical features, looking at the way they walk, looking at the way they talk, and through all of that, you can figure out their intelligence, their maturity, the way they are thinking. All of this is just something that, by study, you can make a connection between these two things. And that's simply a connection between features, physical makeup, biological makeup, and actual personality traits and, intelligence and things of that nature. So this is really something you are really studying, I guess, the ways and the means, right? Because there are connections between the features and between, things like intelligence and these things have been studied, right? So once we understand that there are three types of firasa, a person can study this and learn certain things. But we are speaking of the first one really, right? The first one, al-firasatul imaniyya, which we find that some believers are given. And that's why we see in the hadith, for those who consider it to be hasan, ittaqu firasat al-mu'min, فَإِنَّهُ يَنْظُرْ بِنُورِ اللَّهِ. Like this person, he will know if you're lying or not, or you're being truthful or not. Beware of the, firasa of a believer. So, the point that we are making then is that this al-firasatul imaniyya is not the same as a karama. We do not treat it to be a karama. It's not a miracle. It's not from the same category of being a miracle. It is outside of that category, and it is something else. Right? So, and really this is it's like a totally different subject area. It can be like a type of ilham. Ilham means inspiration. Sometimes Allah Azza wa Jal, He can inspire a person. This is not revelation, but sometimes He puts like an understanding or a realization, or he inspires a person, right? And as a result of which he acquires understanding of something, right? It's more from that angle. It is not from the angle of a karama, which is amrun khariqun lil'ada. So if you can clearly see that difference between the two, then we can see why firasa cannot be seen the same as al-karama. So the firasa that a person has by way of his iman is not the same as the karamat. So this is point number 10, and what we'll do is we'll finish our lesson there for today. We still have a number of other points left to conclude this discussion. Inshallah ta'ala, we'll finish that off in the next lesson, inshallah ta'ala. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen, wa sallallahu ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'een.